Sportscast April 29th, 2020. If you haven't yet, please subscribe on all our channels, Periscope, iTunes, and YouTube. And if you're in iTunes, please leave a rating and review. It will help us out tremendously. And today's sponsor is Insta Bible app. You can download the Insta Bible for iOS and for iOS only. You can share the world a Bible verse and make them happy. The NFL is looking at shaking up their scheduling if needed. A possible scenario is starting the season in late October, and the Super Bowl will be in late February. And joining us all the way from the upskirts of New York, Ryan Christa. Welcome to the Sportscast.
Santiago, it's good. It's good to be talking sports. You know, even though in the near future we don't have much live sports to think about, but we got to start thinking about soon. I hope that there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
These two past weeks was about the last dance in the NFL draft. I think that fulfilled a little bit of what we were missing these past couple of weeks.
Well, it seems like it because, I mean, the viewership of the NFL draft was outstanding. Definitely more than usual. And it proves that people are kind of hungry for sports.
The next big thing for the NFL is scheduling the season. There's some reports where they may start on time, but there's also some reports of starting in late October. There was an article yesterday about that. Ryan, what do you think is going to happen, or it's just unpredictable as of right now?
Oh, you can predict this. And I think, in the next month or so, if states start to put in see how society reacts, and I think that's where we go from. So, but the NFL is being proactive and coming up with a couple different solutions. I mean, all solutions leave the NFL playing this year. I think that's for sure. Unless something drastic happens, a second wave of the virus, but I think we're definitely on pace to play. Whether that'll be, early September or early October, we'll see.
If this happens, if they do start off the season as of Thursday, October 15th, it'll be an NFL season with no bye week or Pro Bowl. These are all the contingencies that the NFL has considered as the league moves forward with its plans to hold a regular full season. The league executives are trying to put themselves in the best position to fit in a full season, or at least a nearly full season, even if there are delays. So pretty much the NFL wants to have a 16 games per team and have a 17-week slate. No bye weeks. Do you think that's possible? In football, we're considering about injuries, rest. Is that going to be a big factor, or what are your thoughts about that?
I think that's huge. I think they're better off playing. Everyone was better off playing 14 games with 2 bye weeks. Especially. We don't want at the end of the season watching backups play. As a playoff, we want to see the best players for each team. I just thought that it's going to be hard to. The players have, they're very vocal. They're not going to like that. The owners don't like that because they want more games, more money. So it's kind of two sides you are going to be opposing each other on this.
Which, in all assumptions, I think that if there will be a preseason, it'll probably happen in September and early October. But I think it'll be closed out to the public. I think it'll be, played at a training camp somewhere.
All the solutions, have got twofold. Are you going to be playing in stadiums, or are you going to be, with people, or are they going to be playing empty? I think you have to come up with, as you make the schedule. And let's say we start on time. In the first month, there's no staying fans. You can't be having a team to play, 3 home games in September with no fans, in the rest of the season that they're playing.
It makes it'll be pretty complex because
and also you got to look at too the overseas games. Is it worth the travel?
No, that's canceled. There ain't going to be a game in London at the Tottenham Stadium.
I doubt it, Santiago. I very much doubt it.
NFL schedule makers are in the process of designing a 2020 season that has several different wrinkles. when the schedule is released next month, it will look like a standard 16 game, 17 weeks late, but it will be designed to allow for several steps that could become necessary depending on the state of the pandemic. The 17-game regular season agreed to in the new CBA into the effect with the 2021 season. So pretty much the NFL is going to put out a schedule, but depending on what happens, they're ready to shift it, to pivot it. You mentioned about empty stadiums, and how much is that significant for people, for like money and revenue? I mean, vendors, would that affect like the players' paycheck a bit?
I don't think so. I mean, the owners will take a hit. What you got to remember, the NFL's money is based a lot on sponsorships and TV money. Yeah, tickets and all other things that come along with home games. But, you know, they would rather play games in front of empty stadiums because at least they'll get the TV money. When you talk about pledge, while there is money in TV, it's nothing like it is. Nothing like it is for the NFL.
How about for TV networks? How much would that affect them?
Yeah, I think that's big for them. It works hand in hand. They get the, they dish out the NFL. But they're getting more money from sponsors than it is in the money that they're dishing out. So, it's kind of a domino effect here.
It's interesting you say that because this kind of put me flashback when I first watched some CFL games a couple years ago, and the stadiums were half empty, but there was not much crowd noise. It was just, you just heard like the players. I can see that for the NFL happening in the first couple of months at least.
I think that's why we all it's kind of this idea, you just want football, whether, you won't be able to go, but, it'll still be there and it'll still be there to watch. So it's important to get the players on the field.
And one version, this is an article by the Sports Business Daily. They got the inside stuff with the NFL, which they're meeting next week about this whole scheduling thing. So we'll see what happens. The start of the season could be delayed up to 5 weeks with relatively few adjustments. Such a scenario would have Super Bowl LV currently set for February 7th, 2021 in Tampa, home of Tom Brady, pushed back by 3 weeks. That's not bad. 3 weeks is not bad. If that happens, it could compete with other big events that typically try to avoid Super Bowl Sunday. When I think about big events, I think about college basketball. Would you say that's the main sport that you're concerned with? Or the NBA All-Star Game? Ryan?
Of all sports are going to be jumbled here, in the next couple of months, if NBA and NHL all come back, the fall could look very, very busy.
Yeah, the fall is going to be pushed back. I think, like Major League Baseball, I think I heard they're going to play it all in Arizona or have like a small tournament or something.
I think what's, now is you're going to be, you'll have division, 10-team divisions, where, they'll just play teams in the division locally instead of going across the country, limiting the amount of travel. So I think that's what you'll see.
Another key part of this article, 2 weeks of early season games could be shifted wholesale to the end of the season. A third week would feature teams only playing opponents with the same bye week. So that week could be cut and buys eliminated league-wide. So we're going to have expectations with no bye weeks. These contingency landing plans also include cutting the weekend between the conference championships and the Super Bowl, which is usually 2 weeks, where the Pro Bowl is typically played to allow another week to be lost to delays. Under such a plan, the Pro Bowl would not be played. I always thought the weeks between the conference championships and the Super Bowl were like way too long for 2 weeks.
No. I think we all would like to eliminate the Pro Bowl and get quicker to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and then when they moved that out of Hawaii, I thought that was kind of a mistake, and they should have had the Pro Bowl after the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't matter really because I don't think it's that's the one thing like to watch the NBA because it's fun to see the players showcase. But I mean, you don't get that same effect by the Pro Bowl. It's just men running down the field, not trying very hard.
Ryan, your reception is a little bit loose, so hopefully you're able to fix it between now and the end of the show.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Let's move on to
Can you hear me better?
Yeah. We'll move on to the NFL draft, the big weekend. A few surprises, a few people like kind of new, but obviously the look at it was who would the Miami Dolphins get and the LA Chargers. Those were the two teams. People were eyeing it. It was the placeholder of the whole NFL draft. Ryan, what were your thoughts about the NFL draft?
Yeah, it was, like you said, the drama of where Tua is going to go was, that's kind of where the draft first started. The first three picks. But, it was, the Giants kind of started off the draft at number 4 by taking Andrew Thomas. We knew they were going to take a lineman. But, all eyes are on Miami, Santiago.
Which the Miami Dolphins were rumored to get Isaiah Thomas first and Tua if they trade up to the 3rd spot or 4th.
Yeah, I think they wanted Tua, and they're going to do everything possible to make sure that Tua was their man. And I think there was the hope. I think they really liked Joe Burrow, and they made an attempt to go get him. But the Bengals definitely were not trading to the Dolphins for the first pick.
Justin Herbert made it to the 6th spot. There was rumors. There was actually a conversation yesterday or on Monday that the LA Chargers GM said if the Dolphins would have picked Herbert, they would have selected Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, no, I think Tua wasn't going to fall below 6. I think we knew that.
Yeah, those rumors never happened.
And both teams. I don't know if Tua wasn't be selected by. I don't know if the Chargers were able to get ahead of the Dolphins if they would have picked Justin Herbert with their pick, but that's water under the bridge because it happened and the teams got the players they really wanted.
Let's go to the team that Ryan was eyeing that night was the Denver Broncos. They got a couple of selections. They got about like 8 or 10, I believe. Let's go to the first one. Jerry Jeudy from Alabama. You've always wanted a wide receiver. It came through and definitely one of the top receivers in the draft. What were your thoughts?
I was super, super happy. I was they're going to I think the Raiders, or at number 12 and whatever receiver they picked, receiver. So, the Raiders chose Henry Ruggs. So I think the Broncos were just ecstatic that they were going to player of that quality at number 15 and put in a position they desperately need help at. The Broncos definitely put a target on blocking that.
They also got 2 other wide receivers, KJ Hamler from Penn State, and also at the 252nd pick, Tyreek Cleveland from Florida, which I think you're very familiar with. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. I mean, I really love that pickup at 7. Most 7th rounders, I think you're taking a flyer. And Tyreek Cleveland, I think with the issue with Florida's wide receivers is that they had so much there. They didn't get on the field as much as they would in normal positions. And that saying that Florida had 3 wide receivers drafted in the draft, which is crazy, more than any other team. So, I think in the 7th round that's great. But getting KJ Hamler, who is a speedster, dynamic player, that was awesome. Another weapon, and also getting Albert
Albert
Big one.
Bunham from Missouri, tight end.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pure pass catcher. He's not going to help you in the run game. So, I mean, so now you got Noah Fant and him, the ability to attack, the team's safe, the tight end position. So, really there's no excuses for Drew Lock. He's got Philip Lindsay, Melvin Gordon in the backfield, now Cortland Sutherland, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Deion Hamilton, a lot of weapons.
Did you use a hot?
Ryan, you got to fix that reception a little bit. Wiggle the phone.
Is that better?
Yeah, sounds better. Put it right next to your mouth. That's the key.
Yeah, so, Drew Lock has no kind of excuse right now for, being productive last year, the end of the season when it started.
Other players of the Broncos.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I think there's definitely a lot of pressure now on the Broncos to take it to the next level. As long as their defense stays good. I think last year you got to remember that defense was awesome. The only reason they lost. The defense was good about 2.5 quarters most games. Unfortunately they kind of they're gassed out because especially during when Joe Flacco was playing, they weren't getting much help on. And they lost, 3 of their first 4 games, were one possession games at the end of the game where they faltered. So now, hopefully,
I think I lost you, right? It feels like you're in Denver.
Game, man, and take chances down the field.
Also, Broncos got cornerback at the 77th pick, Michael Hojemuda from Iowa. They also got center Lloyd Cushenberry. At the 95th spot, defensive lineman McVelvin Agim from Arkansas. And just like Ryan mentioned.
Going to,
Go ahead.
I think I want, really stress on Lloyd Cushenberry. This guy, I think, probably could have gone earlier in the 3rd round, I think there's some mobility issues. He's not as athletic. I think I know LSU offense was awesome last year. He probably had a better season 2 years. So, I mean, getting a player of his caliber in the 3rd round, who probably will be their starting center, hopefully for years to come, was a great steal also. And getting that, the cornerback they got, it's a good value,
Michael Ojemudia from Iowa.
Yeah, he had his moments. I don't think he's a true lockdown corner, but you're not going to get a lockdown corner in the 3rd round necessarily. You're going to take a guy with a good skill set, and that's what they got there.
What do you think about McTelvin Agim, defensive lineman from Arkansas?
When I heard his name, in pre-draft process, it's linked to a couple of different teams. I didn't watch a lot of Arkansas. I watched a lot of college football, like on Saturdays.
But not Arkansas.
Watch a lot of Arkansas this year.
They're one of the worst teams in the SEC, though. Ryan, we lost you. You're in Denver, right, Ryan?
What'd you say?
Oh, you're still there. Okay. I thought I lost you. Okay. So you were saying you don't watch much Arkansas, so you don't know much about McTelvin Agim.
No, yes, I'm saying that, but then when you watch the game film, I watch I think he's a good talent. He's got a hot motor. Because when you're playing on such a weak team, if you're such a talented player, he really is going to stand out like that. So I think, again, that's more of a position of depth for the Broncos right now. So that's a nice luxury, to add another quality player they can plug in right away. Talking about the Broncos draft, I think there, when you get offensive players, big names, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, you're going to add your fans are going to be more excited. Doesn't mean they're all going to pan out, no, but you're going to win the draft on draft day by getting players like that. Everybody's excited. We can't wait to see Drew Lock on the field with all these weapons. We won 4 out of 5 our last game, and Drew Lock played pretty good. but I think there wasn't the explosiveness of the offense still. Now you put these players on the field, and we expect to be explosive. We expect to score points. I think we know our defense is good, and it should be so good next year. A good team is we held the Chiefs to 23 points twice. 2 games we had no chance of winning. So the idea is if we can hold the Chiefs to 23 points again next year, we should be able to score 23 points in that more.
Ryan? Ryan, I'll have to restart this phone call because I think if we restart it, we'll have a better reception and to finish the show strong. Let me recall you. Call you again. Sorry, guys. Sometimes the reception in Rochester is not the best, so Ryan might have an iPhone 8 or a Samsung 1. So we'll see if this one does better.
I'm here.
Ryan, let's see if this is better. Let's finish off what else the Broncos got. They got Justin Strawn. He's a linebacker at a Wake Forest 178th pick, a little bit in like the lower in like the later rounds. What have you heard about him?
He's versatile. He's quick. Kind of lacks the strength that we need. Your everyday linebacker in the NFL. Again, when you get go late on Saturday, you're taking chances on players. These are players who aren't finished products. You're going to try to keep them on the roster. Hopefully they can play special teams, and you can develop them. That's why, and I go back to Tyree too. And this is a guy, if you watch Florida football in the last 2 years, they play their starters on special teams, which a lot of teams, NFL and college, do not do that. Especially, college, you got 100 players on the roster. You want to use a lot of your, you don't want to waste a lot of your good players' energy playing special teams. But not at Florida. It's kind of a gift to play special teams. And Tyree played the punt coverage the last couple of years, and he was always one of the first people to get down and covering punts. So that was one reason. So and that's just in general. When you're picking out late on Saturday, you're looking for players who can fill a special need. And that means a lot of times with the special teams, that's kind of the hidden yards in the game. Maybe not what wins or loses games necessarily, but it definitely is a factor. So I think that's a lot what you see, and while they stay in special teams, and hopefully you can develop them enough that they can play on either side of the ball.
Like the Buffalo Bills GM, Bill Polian, 1 and 3 are flashy, round 1 and 3, but you'll pick the players that will win the Super Bowl for you between rounds 4 through 7.
Yes, well, I mean, Bill Polian has been the GM of the Bills since I was about 7 years old.
Exactly.
He was actually the GM of the Bills when they but got to the 4 Super Bowls, and then also again was the architect of building.
He's the one that got Jim Kelly.
You got to remember, you got to look at, who we look at as a model example in NFL, Bill Belichick. This is a guy who typically loves to draft later in the round guys. He likes to get good value. He likes the guys that have chips on their shoulders. And that's what you get later in, the day 3 of our draft. A lot of times, you got those headliners, those guys that linger around, the Jake Froms, when are they going to get picked? But most of the time, if you're not a college football connoisseur, if you're not into the draft, you're not going to recognize a lot of these names. They're not household names. Maybe, especially because, a lot of times your last round picks are coming from schools that, you may not know much about, a.k.a. Antonio Gandy Golden are from our Liberty University, who I think is a heck of a football player, but he didn't go till day 3, and I think the Redskins got a steal. Is he a finished product? No, he's got a lot of, he didn't, need to use a lot of the skills in the NFL because he was just that, athletic, and he was able to dominate players at, first at the FCS level and then, against the lower tier FBS teams. But, so those are the type of players that you're going to find on day 3. And again, if you pick, 4 players on day 3, you're probably hoping to keep 2 of them on your roster, and then, maybe you keep 1 player, from the practice, a couple players on the practice squad. And also, you got to look at who you select after the draft, the undrafted free agents, the players that are going to fill out your training camp roster. you make, some years you're going to keep one player, some years you're not going to keep any players. But, finding those diamonds in the rough, for many years, the Broncos' top cornerback was a guy named Chris Harris, who just left our team to go to the Chargers. But, he spent 10 years for the Broncos. He was an undrafted player out of Kansas who funny played alongside Keith Talib in Kansas. Well, all the headlines went to Keith Talib, who was ended up drafting early in the first round when he came out. Chris Harris kind of was swept under the rug. He gets picked up an undrafted contract from the Broncos and becomes his own, I think, not even at a Hall of Fame career, but, one of the top cornerbacks in Broncos history. So those, again, you're not going to find one every year, but you're kind of hoping that guys, at least can get you better during training camp and can push our guy, your starters. And those are what you're going to get out of, day 3 of the draft. And,
here's the last, which we spoke about already. Tyreek Cleveland, which you're very familiar with. He's from Florida. Let's finish the last two.
One more story about Tyreek Cleveland. The first time I heard of Tyreek Cleveland, he was a highly recruited player, originally from Jacksonville, moved to Houston. Family, had some family issues. But he comes on campus before school even starts his freshman year. And he's suspended for the first couple of games because he got in trouble, at the dorm before school started his freshman year. And I'm thinking, what a knucklehead, But then, if you ever flip on his freshman year, one of the worst seasons in Florida football history, but it had one of the most iconic plays in Florida history, and that's what they call the heave to cleave. He caught a 70-yard Hail Mary against Tennessee. So that was kind of his, thing for, early on in his career. But, this is a guy who was just recruited on speed, but he became a polished, football player, like I said, playing special teams and all over the field. So that's again, what we find in, the seventh-day plays. Like I said, I know a lot about this player. I saw how he developed character and leadership. A lot of those players, that's what you get on the last day of the draft. We may not know their backstory. They're all going to work their butts off because they're looking for that claim to fame. If you didn't go to Alabama, if you didn't go to LSU, you didn't play in the SEC, or any Power 5 conference, you got to work really hard to get your name out there. And that's the kind of chip on the shoulder you get from those guys.
The last two, we have not mentioned Netane Muti. He's a guard from Fresno State, and edge rusher Derek Tuzakska from North Dakota State. Just like Ryan mentioned, come from schools that no one really goes to play football at. Final thoughts on those two players?
Again,
you don't know anything about them.
Well, before the draft, not too much. North Dakota State, again, is an FCS powerhouse. He gets well coached up. He's got, probably good fundamentals. I saw a little bit of tape. He's not a guy who, his size, is probably going to, really, light up your TV screen,
Right.
But again, a guy I think you can work really hard, has a good motor. He's going to, work hard to try to ball team. And, that's, you want line. This guy make maybe.
Ryan, you're definitely under the snow in Rochester.
You can find.
And there you have it. The Broncos had a draft. A whole lot of NFL specialists were eyeing the Broncos because they had a lot of picks in this draft. And what would Ryan rate the Broncos in this draft? A through F.
I'm going to give it an A because it has potential to be awesome. Again, let's see how we're talking about, when the season's over, how these, who they kept, who made their roster, and how they developed. We don't know the whole history. You don't really judge the team until a couple of years later. Because it takes time. Like I said, some of these players later in draft, you might not hear them out in the first year because they're playing special teams or practice squad. But the longer they stay around, the more chances they have to be impactful.
Something to definitely look at. I really did like the Broncos draft this past year. This past weekend. I think getting Jared Judy was a huge pickup. And, of course, getting another wide receiver like Hamler. I've been hearing Ty Turner having some high remarks about that. And then getting some more defensive stuff, getting that tight end Albert Okubenon from Missouri. I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, and remember, too, this is a guy that Drew Lock has chemistry with because they play with each other in Missouri. So again,
there's a reason why they got him. Maybe just for that.
Yeah, and a lot of it's kind of like a luxury. I said, we got some depth at tight end, and we drafted Noah Fant last year early in the draft, who was kind of one of those round guy classes. You call him a tight end, but really they're just, single wide receivers. So, you add another player like that, it adds depth to the team, So, but then fourth round, what does he lack? He's a total linebacker. He doesn't have much speed, but he's got great hands, Santiago. Big body. Probably great in the goal line. So, that's what we added there.
Definitely will put the Broncos in second place in the AFC West. The Raiders did not have the greatest draft, draft, but we all know.
I thought Al Davis was making those picks. Oh my goodness!
Hey, I love it. I love how they do that. And same people were saying John Elway didn't make these picks for the Broncos.
It sounds like a little bit of Justin Riley there, but that's okay.
I'm making sure you heard the podcast yesterday, so you did.
Yeah. No, John Elway has, his head of checkered history as a GM of the Broncos. Started off great, a.k.a. he brought in Peyton Manning, the greatest free agent in NFL history. And we had a lot of success right away, going to Super Bowls, and then Peyton Manning left, and we have been nothing more than an average football team, and that's being generous. His draft picks haven't always, panned out. We've gone through quarterbacks he's picked, who aren't now, not on the roster anymore. So
when Ryan says something very good, he just gets off the line. Oh, no, he's back. I hear you. You're like a shark. You go attack, you come back in, like underwater, then you come back. Okay.
I don't know. I'm in a good area too. I don't really know why. But,
who's your provider? Is it Metro PCS? I'm kidding.
I guess Sprint. I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, Sprint's bad. I can tell you that. Okay, finish. Some final thoughts on the Broncos draft. 15 seconds.
So I'm really excited about the players. I'm really excited for our offense. As long as our defense stays where it is, like you said, second place team in our division, whether it's good enough to make the playoffs, I think we just want to be, considered to be in the running.
The only thing is experience. Drew Lock, this is going to be his first full season, so there I have some doubts, but we'll see.
Absolutely, Santiago. That's not bad having doubts. It's easy to play football at the end of the season when the games don't matter. You're going to be coming in September when the season's just starting.
If it starts in September, it can start in October 15th. On October 15th.
Yeah, so it's very different. We'll see how he does the rigors of a full football season. That being said, he's got the this could be John Elway's shining light if he does work out. Because last year, Noah Fant, tight end, had moments. Not a lot of great moments, but he had moments.
Right.
Drew Lock, again, good record. Wasn't flashy, but they won games. Are they going to be able to take the next level? And again, are these players he drafted? It's not going to look good, if Jerry Jeudy doesn't pan out, but, CeeDee Lamb is outstanding for the Cowboys because we could have had CeeDee Lamb. So a lot will be going into how these players do in regards to the players we passed up.
A lot of question marks, but Broncos are looking good. Young team.
So, Santiago, who do you think won the draft in your minds of when Sunday afternoon and you're taking a look at all 250-plus draft picks? Who won the draft?
I would say the Baltimore Ravens.
Absolutely, Santiago. Best run organization in the NFL right now is the Baltimore Ravens.
would say
Uh,
maybe the second best team in the AFC. First is Kansas City.
I think they're 1A and 1B Santiago right now. And
Yeah.
I know the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, and I know Patrick Mahomes is their quarterback. But Lamar Jackson's the MVP of reigning MVP of the NFL.
But can they win a playoff game finally? They need that one
it
win.
takes time, Santiago. It takes time. I think the strides they made as a team last year are great, and I think you look at those strides, and then you look at what they added this offseason, what they added in the draft. Did they take the flashy names? Not necessarily, but they take the players, the roles they see. I think Buster Queen, when they drafted him, was an excellent pick. They just, and then next day they go pick up DJ Fluker. He maybe he in his prime, but heck, he's a pretty darn good pickup for this time of year. So again, I just think that it's just so well run, that organization.
Well run it is. Well, old machine. We'll see what happens in the AFC West to be Pacific. We're going towards the end of the show. Give me a quick recap. Of your thoughts over The Last Dance, episode 1 through 4.
This is awesome to see behind the scenes. It's kind of weird because you're looking at a world where this footage, and there's things that we know are all mysteries because we live that this is an era where we didn't have cell phone cameras and we didn't have social media and we didn't know what time went out to dinner. Now we know everything about everything. The privacy, back then, 80s and 90s, there's so much what went on that we just didn't know. We're only privy, I think, to a lot of stories that we heard and to, what we saw on games. The stories we heard, especially this last episode, about Dennis Rodman. Wow.
Yeah, and how he went out went to Vegas by himself, and Jordan had to get him in person, and he found Carmen Electra in there, and she was saying, I don't want to tell you what I was wearing at the time.
It's just interesting because, as a kid, I remember Dennis Rodman as a Dennis Rodman that we saw for the Bulls. But this guy, he was kind of a clean-cut guy when he was at the Pistons, other than playing for what we know as the dirtiest basketball team in any that we've ever known, and that's Detroit Pistons. He was a bad boy.
Yeah, he was. No one really talks about him, but he was a key factor.
He didn't have the colored hair, or
No, yeah, he was normal. According to Isaiah Thomas, he was normal back then.
Yeah, he was normal, and then they tell the story about how he's basically going to kill himself in the parking lot of the Pistons arena, and basically this is how he reinvented it himself. He found his true self. That's kind of. He was kind of the, a 2020 version of life, what we talked about, in the media, where we, portray people. Just be yourself, and that's what he was doing. So that was interesting, the stories, we've learned that, we may not have known, and
Michael Wilbon knew about it, but he was not able, he was not allowed to report it.
Yeah, like the player, I think, like the newspaper columnists knew all this stuff, but like you said, and people knew, but you just weren't allowed to say that because they didn't. I think you remember when Jordan came. He came along the era where the NBA was really fighting this image problem. The NBA doesn't have that problem now, other than maybe being too soft. We don't. What a totally different team. You look at the scores of the games, their games were played in the 80s and low 90s where...
Yeah, they were more physical. They were more physical back then, and you're able to tackle people or, shove people and not get fouled for it.
Yeah, it's just a totally different game, very, very physical. Not saying the NBA isn't physical now because I think we talk about it as if it's not, but it's the games played, the three-point line is, is a lot... Is a much different tool than it is now than it is back then. It really opens up the floor. Players aren't on top of each other, so you a lot more ability to drive the basket.
And
it's just interesting. So how many people are throwing shade on LeBron James? The guy isn't. He's kind of an innocent victim here.
Different times. Yeah.
You know, it would be interesting because I think LeBron really fit the game back then. You know, yeah, he's you know, is he softer? I don't know, but he's a big old player. He's, you know, if you ever, I'm sure being from Miami, you saw, you know, several games of him in person. Man, that guy, you know, I only seen one, and you know, you see it on TV, but it's eye-opening to see him up close and personal, like how big of a man this guy is, and how, you know, what the power he has. You know, I just would be interested to see, because I think he would definitely be pushed around a lot because of his size. He'd be an easy target.
Definitely to look at. Really, really interested in what's going to happen in the next couple episodes. This Sunday will be a little bit a little more in depth about Steve Kerr. So we'll have a Steve Kerr episode this weekend. I don't know if they're going to do a little bit more about Horace Grant.
Horace Grant. You know, I think there's so much made of, you know, like without Scotty, you know, Jordan had a hard time, you know. But there's, you know, I don't want to throw shade at these other players because they, you know, the Dennis Rodmans, the Luke Longleys, the Bill Cartwrights, the Horace Grant, the Steve Kerr, the John Paxson, you know, those are, you know,
Tony
Kukoc.
Kukoc.
And I think what made them so special is that they were willing to be role players. You know, I think that's the problem in the NBA now. Everybody wants to be known as the max contract guy, the superstar. You know, so, you know, you build these teams, you know, with two superstars, and then you got guys, you know, it's hard to find guys who are willing to be the other guys, you know, and I think that's what kind of special about what the Warriors generate. You know, I didn't really love the Warriors necessarily when they got, you know, in their prime. I kind of like the Warriors back when it was just the Flash Brothers. But what was great about the Warriors,
before KD.
You know, when you had Draymond Green, you know, and then Kevin Durant, is that they all kind of fit their role and they're all happy about it, you know, and you were able to fill their roles with Andrew Bogut and Andre Iguodala, who are happily, you know, being. So that's what made the Bulls special. They found players who are happy to just be on a winning team. You know, that's the problem. I think, you know, everybody wants to be the front headline star in the NBA. And, you know, it's hard for GMs to build these teams, you know, with guys who just want to be part of something special.
Something to definitely look at. Of course, episode 3 and 4 is this weekend, is a 10-part series. And we'll see what happens in the last dance. Ryan Christa, what is the best way to reach you online to talk to you about your new member, Jerry Jeudy?
Well, hopefully wherever I am, I have better cell phone coverage next time. That's for sure.
I hope. Give us a break.
Yeah, I know. I want to lay some knowledge on the people, but I don't know.
Hey, once we'll give you a paycheck, I think that could happen.
Yeah. Mad Dog Report 18 on Twitter. So I'm really happy, you know, with the NFL draft. I think we're good. I think that I want one more thing before we go. I don't love the fact that my least favorite team in the NFL has always been, for some darn reason, I think it goes back to the Brett Favre days, was the Green Bay Packers.
Why?
But I think because there was always this rivalry between Favre and Elway, who's the ultimate gunslinger. So I always obviously been an Elway guy. So I really never really liked the Packers. I think for that reason, you know, but I really don't like the pick of Jordan Love. And I know it's the same time as Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers is in his prime. I don't think he had, you know, when they Packers drafted, you know, Aaron Rodgers with Brett Favre as quarterback, there was always this, you know, I think Brett Favre was definitely showing signs of aging, you know, and there was always this, is he coming back this year? We had that talk. There's no talk of Aaron Rodgers retiring. He's still playing at a high level. I just think, you know, in the first round, that it just sends a bad signal to the organization and to the fans that this isn't Aaron's team anymore.
You think so?
I think it is. I think, you know, could Jordan Love being a Hall of Fame quarterback? Absolutely. But I think right now, I think this is a team that one game from the Super Bowl, you got to do is fill some pieces in. You got to get, they got to add to the offensive line. They need a couple weapons on the outside. If there was ever a time to go and pick a wide receiver, this was this year. I think they could have gotten Jordan Love, in the second round, and I think that would have sent a different message. You pick a guy in the first round, the starter right now is looking over his back. You don't want you don't want an angry Aaron Rodgers, and I think that's what the Packers got on their hand right now. And I'm not saying I just don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they have to move Aaron Rodgers if he gets that more upset. Because I'm not saying it's got to be imminent, but they got to sell him on this idea of from a quarterback, which I don't think Aaron Rodgers is that type of guy. I think he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, maybe one of the top 5 ever. But that guy is not, a gracious player. I don't know, a gracious person. He's always kind of been rough around the edges with the media, dealing with other teammates at times. So I just think it was a terrible pick.
We got to have you back again to talk about with the Packers. It feels like you have a lot of emotion and a little bit more in depth. Which we'll have Tyler on tomorrow, but he'll be talking more about Justin Herbert, and of course we'll have Justin on as well. Talk about Tua going to Miami. So it should be quite interesting, the whole situation with Green Bay, and there's been stories about Aaron Rodgers being traded, but not really. I think it's just taking precaution. Hey, Jordan Love has potential.
Yeah. So hopefully next time I'm on San Diego, I think the next weekend, when we talk about beginning of May, I think we're going to have a better idea. Are we going to have NBA basketball this year? Are we going to have NHL hockey? I want to say this in my closing thought here. I really am at this point of let's just cancel the rest of the NBA season. This is coming from a guy who loves NBA basketball.
Which is a big possibility. Could happen.
I think it's likely not. But having a playoff tournament in Las Vegas for a month. But then basically what you're saying is, maybe a month and a half, you're telling all 32 teams to go live in Vegas, not bring your family, play basketball, stay in your hotel. Play basketball, stay in your hotel. That's all they can do. Because,
so you're saying finish the season in Vegas. All the teams go there.
Be fully open, I think.
Or here's my idea. Have a small playoffs. Hey, take whoever was the top 4 on each conference and just play it off. Just do like the whole playoffs and do it in Vegas.
Yeah. I think what they want is like an NBA summer league feel,
Yeah. I mean, look, it's just too soon to come back and play. I think the NFL has a better shot of having fans or having the league, continue normal than an NBA season, even baseball.
Because what you're doing now, let's say they play this in August, July, August. You're pushing back. Now you're going to have the NBA draft, later that, whenever they're done. So you're looking at late August, September. It's just, I think and then you're probably not going to start games until, mid-November now, or December. And then you're probably going to have a shortened season. You're probably going to, whatever, is that, you have an asterisk, no champion this year. Is that a stink for the Milwaukee Bucks, who are the favorite? The Los Angeles Lakers? Clippers? Sure. But at this point, what are we gaining from waiting, Let's just put an end to it. Let's have a draft, normal time in June. Let's gear up for next year. This is, if they have an NBA season, I'm going to be full in. I'm going to go for it. But that's just my opinion right now.
Your humble opinion. And we'll have Ryan back maybe Friday, maybe next week to come back and finish off your emotions over the Packers and the NBA season. But you can follow us at thesportscast.net, thesportscast.net for the latest, or on Twitter at thesportscast1. Sports news is still going on. Leagues are still up in the air. But I do agree with Ryan. I think NBA should cancel or have a small tournament just like the Summer League. But anyways, we got no more time left because we got to go out and pay some bills. Anyways,
right,
Ryan Christa, always a pleasure, and I'll see you soon.
All right. God bless everybody. Bye-bye.